Before you judge me, let me tell you how I got here. At 71, I thought I was moving in with family, not being dropped off at a cold elder care facility with my name misspelled on a paper wristband. They took my house keys without asking, promised they'd handle everything, and drove away, smiling. I smiled back, stayed quiet. And while they played house in what they thought was theirs, I made a few quiet calls, signed a few quiet papers, and what happened next changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. The rosebushes needed pruning. That was the thought circling my mind as Jason's SUV turned onto unfamiliar streets. I'd planted those roses the year my William passed, and they'd become my faithful companions, blooming predictably each summer, requiring just enough care to keep my hands busy without overwhelming my arthritic fingers. Mom, you're awfully quiet back there. Jason's voice drifted from the driver's seat, that forced cheerfulness that had crept into our conversations lately. Just thinking about the garden, I replied, watching strip malls and office buildings slide past. Where did you say we were going for lunch again? Amber twisted in the passenger seat, her smile too bright, like department store lighting. Oh, just a new place we thought you'd enjoy. Very peaceful. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. The same instinct that had warned me when students were about to pull pranks during my 30 years as a school secretary. The SUV slowed, turning into a circular drive. A sign read, Meadowbrook Senior Living. My heart stumbled. Jason? He wouldn't meet my eyes in the rearview mirror. Just for a tour, Mom. Amber thought it would be good to explore options. Options. The word hung in the air like smoke. The building was pleasant enough, red brick with white columns, a tempting colonial charm. But I'd visited enough friends in places like this to recognize the institutional smell beneath the potpourri, the too cheerful artwork masking beige walls. I'll wait in the car, I said firmly. Mom, please. Jason finally looked at me as he parked. Just come inside for a minute. Amber was already out, retrieving something from the trunk. My overnight bag. The one I'd packed thinking we were visiting Jason's family for the weekend. The realization hit like ice water. This wasn't a tour. This wasn't about options. You're leaving me here. The words came out flat, emotionless. Jason's face crumpled slightly. It's not like that. You've been having trouble with the stairs and that fall last month. I tripped over the cat. My voice was rising despite my efforts to control it. I'm 71, not invalid. Amber appeared at my door, opening it with practiced efficiency. Grace, we've already made the arrangements. It's all taken care of. She held out a clipboard with papers. We just need your signature on a few forms. I stared at the papers, then at my son's face. The boy I'd raised alone after William died, who I'd worked double shifts to put through college, who I'd welcomed back home with his pregnant wife when they were struggling. What about my house? My voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking. We'll take care of everything, Amber assured me, that patronizing tone people use with children and the elderly. You won't have to worry about maintenance or bills anymore. Jason reached for my hand. It's for the best, Mom. You'll be safe here and we'll visit all the time. All the time. Like they'd visited last month, when I'd waited with a pot roast that went cold, because they'd decided to go to Amber's sister's instead. A woman in cheerful scrubs approached. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Marta, one of the nurses here. Why don't I show you to your room while your family handles the paperwork? My family. The words tasted bitter. I signed the papers. What choice did I have? My hands shook slightly as I wrote my name, each letter feeling like surrender. "My keys," I said suddenly. "I'll need my house keys." Jason and Amber exchanged a look. "We'll hold on to those for now," Amber said smoothly. "For safekeeping. For safekeeping. My keys, my house, my life." Marta led me down a hallway that smelled of disinfectant and fake lemon. Behind us, I heard Jason and Amber's voices fade, their footsteps quick. Eager to leave, to escape the guilt that surely must be somewhere beneath their relief. The room was small but clean. Beige walls, a single bed, a window overlooking a parking lot. Someone had placed a vase of artificial flowers on the nightstand, a mockery of the real roses I'd left behind. "It's not so bad," Marta said gently, watching me take it in. "The people here are nice." I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands folded in my lap. Does this happen often? Children just leaving their parents? Marta's silence was answer enough. She busied herself checking the closet, the bathroom, giving me space to absorb this new reality. That night, I lay awake listening to unfamiliar sounds. The hum of fluorescent lights, distant footsteps in the hallway, someone's television playing too loud. Through the thin walls, I heard Marta talking to another nurse. "Another drop-off," she was saying. The sun couldn't get out fast enough. "You should have seen the wife, though, already talking about redecorating the house." My house, the one William and I had saved for, where we'd raised Jason, where I'd planted those roses. The house I'd maintained alone for 15 years, telling myself it would someday be Jason's inheritance, a legacy of love. Betrayal tastes like metal in your mouth. It sits heavy in your chest, making each breath feel like work. But beneath the hurt, something else stirred, a spark of something I hadn't felt in years, not since William died, and I'd slowly transformed into Jason's mother instead of Grace. They thought I was old, weak, disposable. They'd taken my keys but forgotten something crucial. The house was still in my name. The bank accounts, the will, the lifetime of careful planning, all still mine. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't beg. I'd learned long ago that dignity was sometimes all you had left. In the darkness, I began to plan. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Morning light filtered through the institutional blinds, casting prison bar shadows across my small room. I'd barely slept, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. Perhaps betrayal sharpens the senses. I found my phone on the nightstand. At least they'd left me that small dignity. My fingers hesitated over Jason's number before moving to another contact. Thomas Reed, attorney and old friend. "Grace?" What a pleasant surprise. His voice was warm, familiar. "Thomas, I need some advice, hypothetically speaking." A pause. "Hypothetically, of course. If someone owned a house outright, could their children legally take possession without consent?" Another pause, longer this time. "Grace, where are you?" I told him. The whole story spilled out. The deception, the papers I'd signed in shock, the keys they'd taken for safekeeping. Thomas listened without interrupting, his silence growing heavier with each detail. "The house is still in your name?" he asked finally. "Yes. William and I paid it off years ago." "Then legally, it's yours. Period. Those papers you signed were for the facility admission, not property transfer." His voice sharpened. "Grace, do you want to meet? Off the record? Please." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop the next day. After hanging up, I sat for a long while, staring at the artificial flowers. Then I picked up the phone again. Marta answered the facility's front desk. Hi, Grace. Everything okay? I was wondering about visiting hours for residents who want to go out. Oh, you can come and go as you please. You're not a prisoner here. She paused. Though most families prefer their loved ones stay on campus for safety. Most families. Not my family. That afternoon, I ventured into the common areas. The dining room buzzed with polite conversation and the clink of silverware on institutional china. I chose a seat by the window, picking at lukewarm chicken and overcooked vegetables. First day? An elderly woman with sharp eyes sat across from me. I'm Eleanor. Grace? And yes. She nodded knowingly. Drop off or voluntary? The bluntness startled me. Drop off. Thought so. You have that look. She leaned closer. Word of advice? Don't let them see you cry. They use tears as evidence you need more care. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Jason. Hope you're settling in. Amber's planning to update your kitchen. Those old cabinets really needed replacing anyway. My kitchen. My cabinets. The ones I'd chosen with William. Refinished myself when money was tight. Another text followed. We're having a little housewarming next weekend. Wish you could be there. A housewarming. In my house. That I apparently couldn't attend. Eleanor watched me. Let me guess. They're already redecorating. I nodded, not trusting my voice. My daughter sold my car the day after she brought me here, Eleanor said matter-of-factly. Said I wouldn't need it anymore. That evening, Marta stopped by my room during her rounds. She found me sitting by the window, still in my day clothes. Not sleeping? She asked gently. Can't seem to. I turned to face her. Marta, how long have you worked here? 8 years. How many people leave? Go back home, I mean. She hesitated. Some do. The ones who have options, and the ones who don't. Her silence was eloquent. I have options, I said quietly. Something shifted in her expression. Good. That's good. After she left, I pulled out a notebook from my purse, a habit from my secretary days. I began making lists, bank accounts, insurance policies, the safety deposit box where I kept William's watch and my mother's pearls. Everything still in my name, still under my control. They'd taken my keys but forgotten the power of paperwork. The next morning, I dressed carefully in my best slacks and blue sweater. The shuttle service, provided for doctor appointments, took me to the coffee shop where Thomas waited. He stood when I approached, his lawyer's suit immaculate despite retirement. Grace, you look well? I look like a woman who's been blindsided by her own son. He didn't argue. Over coffee, I laid out my situation with the same clarity I'd once used to manage school budgets. The house is mine. The bank accounts are mine. The will, which currently leaves everything to Jason, is mine to change. Thomas nodded. All correct? I want to sell the house. His eyebrows rose slightly. That's decisive. They're already redecorating, planning parties, taking ownership of what isn't theirs. My voice hardened. I won't subsidize their betrayal. And Jason, he made his choice. The words hurt, but they were true. Now I make mine. Thomas studied me for a long moment. I have a client, an investor who specializes in quick, discreet sales, cash deals. How quick? With the right paperwork? 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to dismantle the future Jason and Amber had already started spending. Do it. Back at Meadowbrook, I found a bouquet on my nightstand. The card read, Missing you already. Love, Jason, and Amber. I dropped it in the trash. That night, I lay awake again, but this time with purpose rather than despair. Every creak of the building, every distant sound, reminded me of what I'd lost, but also of what I still had. Control, agency, the power to choose my own ending. Let them plan their parties, update their kitchen, dream of inheritances. Let them believe they'd won. Justice doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the form of papers signed in small offices, of plans made in coffee shops, of dignity reclaimed one document at a time. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since arriving at Meadowbrook, I smiled. The coffee shop Thomas suggested for our second meeting was different, tucked away on a quiet side street, the kind of place where business gets done without witnesses. He was already there when I arrived, briefcase at his feet, 2 cups steaming on the table. "The investor is interested," he said without preamble. "Market value, cash deal, can close in 10 days. That fast? He specializes in sensitive situations." Thomas slid a folder across the table. "Everything's here. Sales agreement, title transfer, bank instructions." My hand trembled slightly as I opened the folder. There it was. My house reduced to legalese and numbers. 43 years of memories commodified into neat paragraphs. "There's more," Thomas said, producing another document. "Your will." The original will lay before me, dated 15 years ago, a month after William's funeral. I'd left everything to Jason, my only child, my legacy. "I've drafted a new one per our phone conversation." Thomas's voice was gentle. "Are you certain?" Was I certain? I thought of Jason's face in the rearview mirror, avoiding my eyes, of Amber's bright smile as she took my keys, of the text messages about redecorating my kitchen, about parties in my home that I wasn't invited to attend. "I'm certain." The new will was simple. The bulk of my estate would go to 3 charities: the local food bank where I'd volunteered, the animal shelter that had given me whiskers, and a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. Jason would receive exactly $1, a legal necessity to prevent him from contesting the will on grounds of oversight. I signed every document with steady hands. "What about your personal belongings?" Thomas asked. "The items still in the house?" I'd thought about this. "There's a storage unit on Maple Avenue. I want everything moved there. Family photos, William's books, my mother's china, everything. And Jason, he'll be notified after the sale is complete." Thomas nodded, gathering the papers. "The buyer wants to take possession quickly. We'll need you to sign the final papers next week." "I'll be here." Back at Meadowbrook, I found Marta waiting in my room. "Everything okay?" she asked, noticing my dress clothes. "Doctor's appointment," I lied smoothly. She studied me for a moment. "You know, some residents find they need additional medical consultations during their first few weeks. Adjustment periods can be challenging." I met her eyes, understanding the unspoken offer. "I might need several appointments over the next week or so." "Of course, just let me know." That evening, I called the storage facility and rented a unit, paying for 6 months in advance. Then I contacted a moving company Thomas had recommended. Discreet, professional, expensive. My phone buzzed with another text from Jason. "Kitchen demo starts Monday. So excited to modernize the space. You'll love it when you visit." When I visit? My own home had become a place I might visit. I turned off my phone. The next morning, I met the movers at my house. They'd brought a locksmith. Thomas had thought of everything. Walking through my front door felt like entering a crime scene. Evidence of Amber's plans lay everywhere. Paint swatches taped to walls, furniture rearranged, my carefully tended houseplants replaced with artificial ones. Everything goes, I told the movers. Except the furniture and appliances. They worked efficiently, methodically. William's books, our wedding china, family photographs, spanning generations, all carefully packed and labeled. In my bedroom, I found Amber's jewelry on my dresser, Jason's golf clubs in William's study. The audacity stung, but it also strengthened my resolve. By afternoon, the house was stripped of everything that mattered. The movers loaded the truck while I walked through empty rooms, saying goodbye. In the kitchen, I found a note in Amber's handwriting. Color schemes for the renovation. Thinking gray and white, so much more modern than that dated yellow. I crumpled it slowly. The yellow had been William's choice, sunny like my disposition, he'd said. Back at Meadowbrook that evening, Eleanor found me in the garden. "You look different," she observed. "Do I? Less defeated, more dangerous." I smiled. Maybe I am. The final signing took place a week later in Thomas's office. The buyer, a pleasant man who planned to rent to his daughter, signed quickly, efficiently. The check was deposited directly into my new account, one Jason didn't know existed. "It's done," Thomas said when the buyer left. "The house officially changes hands tomorrow. And Jason, he'll be notified by certified mail. The letter explains that the house has been sold, and he has 48 hours to remove any remaining personal items." I imagined his face when he opened that letter. The confusion, then disbelief, then rage. "There's one more thing," I said, pulling out a sealed envelope. "For my granddaughter. Lily. Sweet Lily who'd called me last week, her voice careful, asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. The only one who'd shown genuine concern. It's a letter and a check for her college fund. I'd set aside enough to cover 4 years at any state school. She's not to know until she turns 18. Thomas took the envelope. "I'll make sure she gets it." That night, I sat in my small room at Meadowbrook, feeling lighter than I had in years. The artificial flowers were gone, replaced with a small potted orchid I'd bought myself. On my nightstand sat a framed photo of William, the only thing I'd kept from the house besides my clothes and jewelry. My phone exploded with calls around 10 a.m. the next day. Jason, Amber. Jason again. I let them all go to voicemail. The first message was confused. "Mom, there's been some mistake. We got a letter about the house being sold." The second, angry. "What have you done? Call me back immediately." The third, from Amber, shrill. "This is illegal. We'll sue. You can't do this." I deleted them all. Marta appeared at my door that afternoon. "There's a man in the lobby demanding to see you. Says he's your son." "I don't want to see him." She nodded. "Security's already handling it." Through my window, I watched Jason's car screech out of the parking lot. Let him rage. Let him realize that actions have consequences, that betrayal has a price. That evening, I drafted a letter of my own. Not to Jason. He'd made his choices. But to the me I'd been. The woman who disappeared into roles. Wife, mother, widow, burden. "Dear Grace," I wrote, "welcome back." The next phase of my plan was already forming. The money from the house sale was substantial. Enough for choices, enough for freedom. I picked up a brochure I'd found in the lobby. Sunrise Apartments, independent senior living. Private units, no medical staff, no institutional meals. Just a community of people choosing how to live their final chapters. Tomorrow I would visit. Tomorrow I would choose. Tonight I would sleep soundly for the first time in weeks, knowing that sometimes the quietest rebellions are the most complete. The morning after watching Jason's car tear out of Meadowbrook's parking lot, I dressed in my best navy suit and called a taxi. The driver glanced at me curiously when I gave him the address for Sunrise Apartments. "Moving day?" he asked. Something like that. Sunrise Apartments stood on the east side of town, a collection of modern 2-story buildings arranged around courtyards and walking paths. No institutional smell here, just fresh air and the scent of flowering trees. The manager, a woman named Patricia, greeted me warmly. "I received your call yesterday," she said. "We do have a few units available." The apartment she showed me had large windows overlooking a garden, a full kitchen, and most importantly, a door that locked from the inside, with keys only I would possess. "I'll take it," I said before we'd finished the tour. Patricia raised her eyebrows. "Don't you want to see the amenities? The community center, the—" "I'll take it," I repeated. "How soon can I move in?" "Well, with the background check and references," I pulled out my checkbook. "I can pay 6 months in advance. Cash." Her professional smile widened. "In that case, you could move in as early as next week." Back at Meadowbrook, I found Marta in the break room. She looked up from her coffee, took in my suit, and determined expression. "You're leaving," she said. Not a question. "Next week." She nodded slowly. "Need any help?" "Actually, yes." I sat beside her. "I need someone to accept some deliveries. Furniture. Basics for the new place." "Consider it done." She paused. "Your son called the front desk 6 times today." "I know." "He's threatening legal action." I smiled. "Let him." That afternoon I went shopping, not at the thrift stores I'd frequented for years, but at real furniture shops. I bought a bed with a proper mattress, a comfortable reading chair, a small dining set, simple things, quality things, chosen by me for me. My phone continued to buzz with calls and messages. I finally listened to one voicemail from Jason. "Mom, please, let's talk about this. You're not thinking clearly. The stress of moving must have confused you. We can fix this. Just call me back." Not thinking clearly. The same words they'd used when they'd taken my keys. I blocked his number. The next morning, a different call came through. An unfamiliar number with our area code. "Grandma?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you okay?" My heart clenched. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Are you calling from school?" "Yeah. Mom and Dad they're really upset. They said you sold the house? That you're sick and not making good decisions." I chose my words carefully. "Lily, I'm not sick. I'm making exactly the decisions I need to make." "But why? Why did you sell the house? Why won't you talk to Dad?" The hurt in her voice nearly broke my resolve. "Sometimes, sweetheart, we have to choose ourselves, even when it's hard." "I don't understand." "You will someday. I hope you never need to, but if you do, you'll understand." A pause. Can I still see you?" "Of course, once I'm settled in my new place. You're welcome anytime." I hesitated. "But it might need to be without your parents knowing. At least for now." "Okay." Another pause. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, Lily." The moving day from Meadowbrook was almost anticlimactic. I had so little. Just 2 suitcases and a box of personal items. Eleanor watched from the common room as I signed my discharge papers. "Good for you," she said quietly as I passed. "Some of us left it too late." Marta walked me to the taxi. "You know," she said, "in all my years here, I've rarely seen someone reclaim their life like this. It shouldn't be rare. It shouldn't." She pressed a card into my hand. "My personal number, in case you ever need anything." The taxi drove away from Meadowbrook, and I didn't look back. My new apartment smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The furniture I'd ordered had been delivered. and Marta had arranged everything thoughtfully. On the kitchen counter, I found a welcome basket with a note. From your friends at Meadowbrook. Live well. M and E. That first night, I sat in my new reading chair, watching the sunset through my windows. The silence was different here. Not the enforced quiet of institution walls, but the peaceful silence of solitude, chosen rather than imposed. A knock at my door made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw a woman about my age, holding a plate covered in foil. "Hi," she said when I opened the door. "I'm Marla, from 2B. Saw you moving in earlier. Brought cookies." Real cookies, not the packaged kind from Meadowbrook's dining hall. "Thank you. Would you like to come in?" Marla turned out to be a widow, too, 5 years on her own. "Sold the big house last year," she explained over tea. "Kids thought I was crazy, moving here instead of with them. Mine didn't give me the option to choose." Her eyes sharpened. "Ah, one of those stories." I found myself telling her everything. The deception, the facility, the quiet revenge of selling the house. She listened without judgment, occasionally nodding. "Good for you," she said finally. "Too many of us just accept what others decide for us, as if age erases our right to choose." "That's exactly it," I said, feeling understood for the first time in weeks. After she left, I unpacked my photos, including one of Jason as a boy, gap-toothed and grinning. I traced his young face, wondering when that sweet child had become a man who could discard his mother so easily. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd chosen, in a home I controlled. I made coffee in my own kitchen, sat at my own table, and planned my day according to my own desires. The freedom was intoxicating. I spent the week settling in, meeting neighbors, learning the rhythm of my new life. There was a community garden where I could tend real flowers, a library within walking distance, a cafe that served afternoon tea. On Friday, Thomas called. "Jason hired a lawyer." I expected as much. "He's claiming undue influence, mental incompetence, the usual tactics. And he has nothing. Every document was properly executed. You were clearly competent. The sale was legal." He paused. "He's also discovered the will change." I waited. "He's not taking it well." I imagine not. "Grace, he's desperate. Be careful." That afternoon, I saw Jason's car in the parking lot. He was standing near the entrance, scanning windows. I stepped back from view, heart pounding. Not with fear, but with a cold resolve. I called security. "There's a man in the parking lot. He's not a resident, and I don't want him here." They responded quickly, professionally. Through my window, I watched them approach Jason, saw his gestures become animated, then angry. Finally, he left. I poured myself a glass of wine, something I rarely did, and toasted the empty air. "To boundaries," I whispered. That evening, Marla invited me to join her book club. "We're not very serious," she warned. "More wine than literature." "Perfect," I said. As I sat in her living room, surrounded by laughing women my own age, I felt something unknot in my chest. These were people who saw me as Grace, not as someone's mother or widow or burden. My phone buzzed with yet another message from Amber. "You've destroyed this family." I turned it off. The family had been destroyed long before I sold the house. It had crumbled the moment they decided I was disposable, that my wishes didn't matter, that my life was theirs to manage. I was just choosing not to pretend anymore. That night, I wrote in my journal, another new habit. "Today I chose myself again. Tomorrow I will do the same. Each day, a choice. Each choice, a freedom." The moon hung full outside my window, illuminating a world that suddenly seemed full of possibility, even at 71. 3 weeks into my new life, the certified letter arrived. Thomas had warned me it was coming. Jason's formal legal challenge to the house sale. I read it over morning coffee, noting the desperate language, the accusations of elder abuse, the claims of mental deterioration. "What are you going to do?" Marla asked when I showed her the letter. We'd fallen into a comfortable routine of morning walks and afternoon tea. "Nothing," I said. "Thomas is handling it. The law is clear." She nodded approvingly. Good boundaries make good lives. That afternoon, while I was tending the community garden, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mrs. Whitmore," a young voice, nervous. "This is Rachel from Meadowbrook. I probably shouldn't be calling, but your daughter-in-law was just here." My hand stilled on the rosebush I was pruning. "Amber? She was asking questions about your mental state while you were here, trying to get staff to sign statements." Rachel lowered her voice. "Marta shut her down, told her to leave. Thank you for letting me know." After hanging up, I sat on a garden bench, feeling the weight of Jason and Amber's desperation. They weren't just angry about losing the house. They were humiliated. Their carefully constructed image of the devoted son and daughter-in-law had crumbled, and they were scrambling to rewrite the narrative. That evening, another call came. This time, I recognized the number. Lily's cell phone. "Grandma?" She was crying. "Can I come see you?" "Please." "Of course, sweetheart. What happened?" "Mom and Dad, they're fighting all the time. About money, about the house. Dad blamed me today, said I must have known what you were planning." Her voice broke. "I didn't know anything." "I know you didn't. Where are you now?" "At Jenny's house. I told them I was studying. I'll send a car for you." An hour later, Lily sat on my couch, her face blotchy from crying. At 17, she looked so much like Jason had at that age, but with something in her eyes he'd lost along the way. Integrity, perhaps. "They had to move," she said quietly. "To a small apartment. Mom's furious. She says you've ruined everything." "What do you think?" She was quiet for a long moment. I think they shouldn't have put you in that place. I told Dad it was wrong, but he said it was for your own good." She looked up at me. "It wasn't, was it?" "No, it wasn't." "Why didn't you tell me before you sold the house?" I took her hand. "Because you're 17. This wasn't your burden to carry." "But I could have helped." "You did help. You called. You cared. That meant more than you know." We sat in silence for a while, drinking tea, watching the sunset through my windows. "Mom found out about the will," Lily said finally. "The new one." I waited. "She says you're leaving everything to charity, that Dad gets nothing." "Almost nothing," I corrected. "He gets $1. Lily's eyes widened. "Why $1? "Legal reasons, to show I didn't forget him. I chose to disinherit him." She absorbed this. Are you disinheriting me too?" "No, sweetheart. There's something set aside for you, for college. But you can't know the details until you're 18. Relief flooded her face, followed quickly by guilt. "I shouldn't care about that." "It's okay to care. Money matters. That's why your parents did what they did. They cared more about my house than my happiness." "Dad says you're being vindictive." "Maybe I am," I admitted. "But sometimes vindication and justice look the same." After I sent Lily home, with promises to visit again soon, I found an email from Thomas. The subject line read, "Settlement offer." Jason's lawyer was proposing a deal. If I agreed to void the house sale, Impossible now. Or compensate Jason for his lost inheritance. They would drop the legal challenge and agree to reconciliation. I laughed out loud, alone in my apartment. Reconciliation. As if relationships could be bought back like items from a store. I replied to Thomas, "No settlement, no reconciliation. Proceed as planned." The next morning, Amber appeared in the lobby of Sunrise Apartments. I saw her through the security cameras, a feature I'd come to appreciate. "Let her wait," I told the desk attendant. "I'm not available." I watched on the monitor as Amber paced, gestured, demanded to see me. The staff, well trained in protecting residents' privacy, remained politely firm. After 20 minutes, she left. That afternoon, I received a long, rambling email from Jason. It cycled through accusations, pleas, threats, and finally, manipulation. "Mom, you raised me to believe family comes first. What kind of example are you setting for Lily? Do you want her to think it's okay to abandon family when things get difficult? Please, let's fix this. Come home. We'll take care of you properly this time." Come home. To a house I no longer owned. To be taken care of by people who'd proven they couldn't be trusted with my well-being. I forwarded the email to Thomas with a simple note. For the files. The legal proceedings dragged on for another month. Jason's lawyer tried every angle. Undue influence, diminished capacity, fraud. Each claim fell apart under scrutiny. My medical records showed no cognitive decline. The paper trail was impeccable. Multiple witnesses could attest to my sound mind. During this time, I built my new life piece by piece. I joined Marla's book club, started volunteering at the local library, took an art class at the community center. Each activity was a choice I made for myself, a small act of rebellion against the notion that elderly women should simply wait quietly for death. Lily visited when she could, always secretly. Through her, I learned about Jason and Amber's deteriorating situation. They'd maxed out credit cards renovating my house. Renovations now benefiting the new owner. They'd told friends and family they were inheriting the property, and the humiliation of the truth was eating at them. "Dad applied for a second job," Lily told me one afternoon. "Mom's talking about selling her jewelry." I felt a twinge of something. Not quite guilt, but sadness for the man Jason could have been. The final court hearing came on a crisp October morning. I wore my best suit, my mother's pearls, and William's watch on a chain around my neck. Thomas had assured me my presence wasn't necessary, but I wanted to be there. Jason looked older than his 48 years. Amber sat rigid beside him, her designer clothes at odds with their new financial reality. They didn't look at me as I entered the courtroom. The judge's ruling was swift and unambiguous. The sale was legal. My will was valid. No evidence of incompetence or undue influence existed. Case dismissed. As we left the courthouse, Jason caught up to me on the steps. "Mom, please." I turned to face him, really looking at him for the first time in months. "What do you want, Jason?" "I want my mother back." "No," I said quietly. "You want my money back. There's a difference. How can you be so cold?" "I learned from experience." Amber appeared at his side, her face tight with fury. "You're a selfish old woman. We took care of you." "You imprisoned me," I corrected. "You took my home, my freedom, my dignity. All because you wanted an easier life at my expense. We're your family. Family doesn't treat each other as disposable." I walked away, leaving them on the courthouse steps. Thomas fell into step beside me. "Clean break," he observed. "Clean conscience," I replied. That evening, I hosted my first dinner party in my new apartment. Marla came along with Eleanor, who'd finally left Meadowbrook on her own terms, Marta, now a friend rather than a caregiver, and 2 other neighbors from the building. As we sat around my table sharing food and laughter, I realized something profound. This was a family, too. One built on respect rather than obligation, affection rather than genetics. My phone buzzed with one last message from Jason. "You'll regret this." I turned it off and raised my glass to my chosen family. "To new beginnings," I said. "To freedom," Marla added. "To justice," said Eleanor. The clink of glasses sounded like victory. Winter arrived with unusual gentleness that year, as if nature itself was offering a soft landing after the storms of recent months. I watched the first snow from my reading chair, a cup of tea warming my hands, remembering how I used to shovel the long driveway at the old house while Jason promised he'd get to it later. 6 months had passed since the court ruling. The legal victory had been absolute, but the emotional aftermath lingered like wood smoke, faint but persistent. I'd built a full life here at Sunrise, yet sometimes in the quiet moments, I wondered about the family I'd lost, or rather, the family that had lost itself. The community garden lay dormant under snow, but the indoor activities thrived. I'd become the unofficial coordinator of the building's book club, started teaching basic computer skills to residents who wanted to connect with distant grandchildren, and even joined Marla's walking group. "You're different than when you first arrived," Patricia, the building manager, observed one morning. "More present." "I had to remember who I was," I replied. "Apart from being someone's mother." She nodded knowingly. "We see that a lot here. People rediscovering themselves after years of being defined by others." That afternoon, while organizing the community room for our weekly coffee hour, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Grandma, it's Lily. New phone. Can we talk?" I called immediately. "Lily? Is everything okay?" I turned 18 yesterday. 18. I'd marked it on my calendar but hadn't known how to reach out, given the circumstances. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I have something for you." "That's why I'm calling. I got a letter from Mr. Reed's office about a college fund." "Yes, it's yours now." A long pause. "Grandma, it's so much. I can't accept this." "You can and you will. It's for your education, your future. Mom and Dad don't know yet. Things are difficult." "How difficult?" "Dad took a night job. Mom's working retail now. They fight constantly. About money, about the apartment, about you." Her voice dropped. "Mom says horrible things." "I'm sorry you have to hear that. Don't be. I understand now. What they did to you." Another pause. "Can I come over?" "There's something else I need to tell you." An hour later, Lily sat across from me, looking older than her 18 years. She'd brought a small wrapped package. "Before we talk," she said, "this is for you. I've been saving it." Inside was a framed photo I'd never seen. William and me at Jason's college graduation, our faces bright with pride. "Where did you find this?" "In Dad's old yearbook. I thought you should have it. To remember the good times, too." Tears pricked my eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart." She took a deep breath. "I'm moving out. I got early acceptance to state. With the college fund, I can afford the dorms, start fresh." She twisted her hands. "But I feel guilty leaving them." "Guilt seems to be our family inheritance," I said gently. "But it doesn't have to be. They'll see it as choosing sides. Choosing you. Are you? Choosing me?" She met my eyes. "I'm choosing truth and respect. And the grandmother who showed me what dignity looks like." We talked for hours that afternoon. I learned about the full extent of Jason and Amber's downfall. The friends who distanced themselves, the social circles that had closed, the crushing debt from their premature renovation spending. "Dad keeps saying you'll change your mind about the will," Lily said. "He's convinced you'll forgive him eventually." "Forgiveness and consequences aren't mutually exclusive," I replied. "I've forgiven him for my own peace, but forgiveness doesn't erase accountability." "Will you ever speak to him again?" I considered this. If he ever comes to me with genuine remorse, not for losing the house, but for the betrayal itself, then perhaps, but I won't hold my breath. After Lily left, promising to stay in touch during college, I sat with the photograph she'd brought, William's arm around my shoulders, Jason beaming between us. When had that proud young man become someone capable of such calculated cruelty? The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Thomas arrived with a manila envelope and a peculiar expression. "Jason's been in touch," he said, settling into my armchair. "Oh. He's asked me to present you with what he calls a final offer." I almost laughed. "Let me guess. He'll graciously accept a mere half of my estate, if I'll just pretend the last year never happened." "Close. He's offering to forgive you for selling the house, if you'll restore him to the will. Full inheritance. His words, not mine." The audacity was breathtaking. "And if I refuse?" "He says he'll never speak to you again, cut you off from any future grandchildren, make sure you die alone." I did laugh then, full and genuine. "Thomas, I've never felt less alone in my life." "That's what I told him you'd say." He smiled. "Shall I draft a formal refusal?" "Please, and Thomas, make sure he understands this truly is final." Spring arrived early, bringing with it new growth in the community garden, and an unexpected letter from Eleanor's daughter. Eleanor had passed peacefully in her sleep, and her daughter was organizing a memorial. "She talked about you often," the letter read, "about how you inspired her to finally stand up for herself. She wanted you to have the enclosed." Inside was Eleanor's silver bookmark, engraved with a quote, "It's never too late to be who you might have been." The memorial was small but meaningful. I met Eleanor's daughter, Sarah, who seemed genuinely remorseful about their estrangement. "I didn't understand," she said. "I thought I was protecting her. Instead, I was erasing her." "She forgave you," I assured her. "She just couldn't live under your terms anymore." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "Like you and your son?" "Similar, yes. Do you have any regrets?" I thought about this. I regret that it came to this, but I don't regret choosing myself. Lily started college that fall. She visited often, bringing textbooks to study in my quiet apartment, sharing stories of dorm life and new friends. She was thriving, free from the toxic atmosphere of her parents' disappointment. "Dad asked if I've seen you," she mentioned one weekend. I told him the truth. "How did he react?" "He said you're poisoning me against them." She shook her head. "He still doesn't understand. It's not about sides. It's about truth." Thanksgiving approached, my first in my new life. Marla organized a building-wide potluck for those without family plans. As I prepared my contribution, William's mother's stuffing recipe, my phone rang. "Jason." I stared at the screen, then answered. "Mom?" His voice sounded older, tired. "Please don't hang up." "I'm listening." "Lily's not coming home for Thanksgiving. She says she has plans with friends, but I know she's probably with you. She's at school, Jason, building her own life. We have nothing, Mom. The apartment, our jobs. It's all falling apart. Amber's talking about leaving me." I waited. "I know I deserve this," he continued, his voice breaking. "I know what we did was wrong. Not just taking the house, But putting you in that place, treating you like you didn't matter. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd heard from him. What do you want, Jason? I want to see you. To talk. Really talk. He paused. Not about money or the will or any of that. Just to see my mother. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of maternal love that never truly dies, even when trust does. Sunrise Apartments, Sunday afternoon, 2:00. Just you. Thank you, he whispered. I spent the next 3 days preparing myself emotionally. Marla offered wisdom over tea. Remember, you can love someone without giving them power over you. Jason arrived precisely on time, looking diminished in a way that had nothing to do with his cheaper clothes or worry lines. We sat in the community room, a pot of tea between us. The apartment's nice, he offered awkwardly. It suits me. Silence stretched between us until he finally spoke. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand and she says I felt entitled to what you built, that I saw you as a resource, not a person. He met my eyes. She's right. I said nothing, letting him continue. When Dad died, you held everything together. You were so strong. I started thinking you didn't need anything, that you existed just to provide for me. He looked down. I never saw you as someone with your own dreams, your own needs. And now? Now I see what I threw away. Not the house, that's just money. But you, your trust, your love. His voice cracked. I threw away my mother. Yes, I said simply. You did? We talked for 2 hours. Not about reconciliation or forgiveness. Those would take time, if they came at all. But about truth. About seeing each other clearly for the first time in decades. As he stood to leave, Jason hesitated. Can I hug you? I rose and embraced my son. Not the entitled man he'd become, but the broken one trying to find his way back to humanity. This doesn't change the will, I said quietly as we separated. I know. I don't expect it to. Christmas came with a card from Jason. Simple, sincere, without manipulation. Lily spent the holiday with me, bringing her new boyfriend to meet the grandmother she was proud to claim. On New Year's Eve, as Marla and I watched fireworks from my balcony, I reflected on the year's journey. I'd lost a house but gained a home, lost a family but found a community, lost my role as caretaker but discovered myself. The next morning I began writing letters to leave with Thomas, not legal documents, but personal ones. To Lily sharing family history she should know. To Jason explaining not just my actions, but my love, complicated as it was. To Amber, wishing her peace despite everything. And to myself, celebrating the woman who chose dignity over duty, self-respect over submission. The roses I planted in the community garden bloomed spectacularly that spring. As I tended them, I thought of the ones I'd left behind and smiled. Some things, once uprooted, grow even stronger in new soil. Jason visited monthly now, slowly rebuilding trust through consistency, rather than grand gestures. Amber had indeed left him, moving back to her parents' home. He was rebuilding his life, humbler, but perhaps more authentic. On my 73rd birthday, surrounded by friends who'd become family, I opened a gift from Lily, a silver picture frame engraved with words that captured everything. To Grandma, who taught me that love means respect, and freedom is the greatest inheritance. I placed it next to William's photo, next to Eleanor's bookmark, next to all the symbols of my journey from the woman who was defined by others to the woman who defined herself. That night I wrote in my journal, "Legacy isn't what we leave behind in death, but what we inspire in life. I may not leave Jason wealth, but I've left him and myself something far more valuable. The truth that love without respect is just possession, and that it's never too late to choose your own worth. The moon hung full outside my window, illuminating not an ending, but a continuation of dignity reclaimed, of boundaries honored, of life lived on my own terms. And that, I realized, was the quietest and most powerful legacy of all. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will talk.